Hello and welcome to episode 183 of the Book Binge, where after recording already like 10 other videos this weekend, I'm recording another a day ahead of when I originally planned to do it because I can, and because this one's going to be relatively short and simple to cover. I'm always excited to do these reading wrap-ups and TBR videos every single month. And this month is absolutely no different. I have a couple really exciting things to cover of what I've read and started reading, and then the TBR for the next month is going to be pretty easy to do, all things considered. But with all of that being said, and how straightforward this update is going to be, let's jump into last month's reads, starting off with the very first book I read in September, was The West Passage by Jared Pekacek. I believe that is how it's pronounced, and if it is not, I apologize for the mispronunciation. I based that off of an AMA answer the author actually did on Reddit at one point in time a couple months ago, so if I still managed to mess it up beyond recognition, like I said, I apologize. This was an interesting read and one that didn't fully come together for me overall. If you want to know my thoughts on this a little bit more specifically, my review for it will be coming out in just a couple of weeks, but it was one that I thought had a lot of really cool ideas, a lot of really cool world building and lore moments, and a lot of stuff going on visually that was really great. And if you've taken a look at this cover, you know that like visually there's some pretty cool stuff going on in here, but like I said, I would not say that all of it fully came together for me, largely on account of it actually being a little bit too short. But if you want to know more details, like I said, I'll have a review for that in a couple of weeks. I'm glad I read it, but definitely not one of my favorite reads. The next thing that I read in September, however, is absolutely something that I could consider a favorite read of mine, and that is Valor by John Gwynne, second book in Faithful and the Fallen. Now, if you've been on this channel for a while, or if you happen to be introduced to the channel through Malice's review, shooting up more or less, relatively speaking for me anyway, in the algorithm the last few months, you know that I was pretty mixed on Malice. Mixed to positive, I would say, is what my sentiment was at. I thought that I had a lot of great potential, but I wasn't sure really how I felt about a lot of that. The review and the way that I talked about it in updates and stuff was definitely a little bit more mixed to negative, the way I sounded, that is for sure. So it was about 14 months between finishing the reading of Malice and starting Valor. I thought that I would struggle with this a lot, and I definitely did not. I really loved this book. Just about everything that I liked about Malice, I liked even more in Valor. Just about everything that I, liked the idea of, but thought had issues in Malice, I liked even more in Valor and thought was actually good, didn't really have complaints. And even the things that I thought were outright, like, to a degree that I couldn't really abide them in Malice, I definitely thought that they were done to an extent in Valor that was fully acceptable or completely fixed the problems that I otherwise had with them. John Gwynne definitely changed my mind here. I'm very glad I continued. I knew that I was going to continue at some point. It just ended up being several months later than I intended. In fact, it was as early as like March this year in 2024 when I was like saying to myself, I kind of want to read Valor now, but my schedule never really opened up for it until September. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna throw it in there for no reason. But that is where I'll leave off my talking about Valor for now. The next couple items on the September reading are books that I haven't actually finished yet. They're a little bit longer and I'm reading them concurrently, and because they're a little bit longer, it's hard to get through them. The first one of note is I have finally started Lord of Chaos, book 6 of the Wheel of Time, continuing on my journey with this series. I'm actually quite a ways in there. In fact, at the time of recording, I'm a couple chapters ahead of where I need to be for the Wheel of Time Diaries videos that come out on Thursdays whenever I read these books. So this Thursday's diary is probably going to be quite lengthy, just as the first one was. The first one had a lot to cover, due in no small part to the prologue, but this one I'm a couple chapters ahead of where I needed to be so that I can finish it on time, and I'm going to try to stay a little bit ahead with this one, because if I fall behind, that could have detrimental consequences for my video schedule. And I'll say it's been really great. The Infamous Bull plotline has started just as of today's reading, actually, so I've hit that point in the book, but I'm not too worried about anything. I've enjoyed basically everything in here so far. Nothing has been bad outright, so I'm looking forward to continuing. In fact, compared to, like, say, The Shadow Rising, which is a good comparison, these two are very often cited as being some of the best books in the series, especially the ones that Robert Jordan himself wrote. And where The Shadow Rising had the more unpopular opinion of finding it like the weakest book in the series up to this point, Lord of Chaos is looking like potentially the strongest. Whether or not it ends up being my favorite in the end is something else entirely, but at the very least, it is looking like the strongest right now. The other book that I did start in September is one that I'm doing as a read along in the Red Company, the Sun Eater fan Discord. That is Witchy Eye by DJ Butler. Basically, if you want to imagine it a flintlock fantasy, it's not an inaccurate term, but really there's a lot of cool ideas going on in here. There's the epic fantasy type of ideas going on, but a lot of it's in like an alternate history Appalachian America. So, like, actually the United States of America, but where certain things diverge in history, alternate history fantasy stuff. It's got a lot of really cool ideas. If you happen to pick up a paperback of this anymore these days, the second edition of it, it has an author's preface at the beginning that's just like 5 or 6 pages that gives you a great idea of some of the influences, some of the things that Butler took and used as influence for the world building, and where Witchy Eye and the Witchy Wars series kind of originated. That preface is super hype. It is really cool to read the preface. It made me so excited to start reading the book. And where the first couple chapters of it I was a little bit worried about. It took me a lot longer to read those first couple chapters than I think it should have, and probably was due to mental and emotional strain, we'll say, due to a death in the family, like really shortly before I started reading the book. I don't know whether that was the reason or because there's a high learning curve to this, which is also true, but I definitely plowed through a little bit more of it last Monday. I was originally going to record this video on September 30th, like after I got home from work, because I knew that tomorrow morning, basically, I would be able to read a lot more of this. But I decided to just cover this anyway. I'm a little bit ahead of schedule for this book as well. Same thing with Lord of Chaos, and I'm going to try to stay ahead of schedule on this one. I've enjoyed my time with it. I already have a favorite character, one of my favorite characters that I've read this year in Bill. Bill is just so cool, and I'm very excited to see where the story goes. But now that I've talked about everything I read last month, let's talk about my book of the month. Between the two books that I finished, I'm pretty sure it's obvious that Valor is my book of the month, and since I'm not far enough into either of the other two books to even justify saying I think this could be it, but Valor's the book of the month anyway. I love this book. It's one of my favorite books of the year. I loved this book enough that I very nearly decided to mess up my entire TBR basically for the rest of the year, and by starting Ruin immediately after finishing Valor. That's how much I enjoyed this. That's how much it worked for me. And I'm glad I didn't, but I know that I'm probably almost certainly going to be finishing The Faithful and the Fallen in 2024, which I did not actually see coming before I started this. I wondered if it would be another case of like, yeah, it was okay, and I'll continue eventually, and then it'd be another 14 months before I pick up Ruin. No, I'm probably going to finish the series this year. This book was amazing. Absolutely deserving of my book of the month for September. For this month's reads, the October TBR, well, this one's pretty simple. The two main things that I'm going to be working on are finishing Lord of Chaos. I need to finish this one by, what is it? Is October 31st a Thursday this year? I believe it is, yeah. So October 31st is a Thursday, and when the last diary, theoretically, for Lord of Chaos is supposed to come out. So, like, I need to have this book finished by Wednesday afternoon, so that I have enough time to record the final diary and upload it in time for Thursday's video schedule. So I have basically the entire month to finish it. Given that I'm a little ahead of schedule, I'm confident that I should be able to do that, but it is definitely taking a long time to read because so many words on each page. So it's like underestimating and overestimating at the same time how much time it is taking to read, but that's the main thing. The other thing is I would like to also finish Witchy Eye this month. For a little bit, with the first couple chapters especially, I wasn't sure if that was going to be possible, if I would have time to do that. But as long as I'm able to push through the rest of the book as quickly as I was able to read through chapters 3 through 6, I think I could actually finish this month, and even though I'm only really reading this on like Mondays and that's it. So I'm definitely going to try my best to finish it this month. No harm, no foul. If not, I can just read it over that first weekend of November and finish it then, which will still be in time for the next reading wrap-up and TBR video. So basically, by the next one of these updates, I'll probably have, and almost certainly have, both Lord of Chaos and Witchy Eye done. And that's the only real plans I have. For if I have time, I would be throwing in this, but I'm actually going to be starting it like today, technically, because of all the 10 videos, 11 if you count this one that I've recorded this weekend. I'm editing most of them this weekend as well, and while videos render, I typically read something because my PC is otherwise occupied. I'm going to go ahead and start on a recommendation from a friend, Monster by Naoki Urasawa. My apologies for butchering the name, I'm sure I did. Manga that I'm supremely interested in, especially based on, I don't think I've really heard any negative sentiment for this thing from anybody who's read it. So I'm super interested in reading it kind of as a rule, and also because, well, in the wake of, you know, the death in the family, I'm not really in the mood right now to read something like Goodnight Poon Poon, which was going to be my manga read for the end of this year, because by all accounts that one's pretty depressing read. Maybe not necessarily because of loss specifically, but just because it's just a downer. So I'm looking forward to something that's a little bit more maybe thriller-esque, detective type of stuff, something a little bit more fun anyway. I understand that Monster still gets dark at times, but like darkness isn't the problem. It's the mood of it. So I'm excited to start Monster. I've been looking forward to it from the minute that I decided to buy the set of it. So I'm going to be starting this today. So basically the goal for October is to read just the one volume. I don't really have any specific need to plow through Monster, especially since it's 9 volumes, so I'm going to take my time with it if I need to. But if I happen to be able to read a second volume just on account of whatever time or something that I have, making sure, of course, that I'm reading these 2 books, Witchy Eye and Lord of Chaos, as my main focus through the month, I will read however much of Monster I can or am able to. But like I said, volume 1 is going to be the goal. If I have time, I'm basically including this here as a formality because I know I'm not going to have time, and I'm not even going to try to make time for it. But I was originally going to try to join a relatively large group of friends on Discord who were going to read House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, I think is how his name is pronounced. I might have that wrong, and I apologize. The reason for this is pretty obvious. House of Leaves is something that's going to require a little bit more dedication to reading, and not only am I not really in the mood for doing that when I have so much on my plate already, like I said, I know I'm already not going to have time for it. I'm including it as a formality because I wanted to join. So it turns out that my original idea of probably reading this one in October of 2025 is going to be the case, kind of like what I did for Infinite Jest earlier this year, dedicating it for like my summer reading project. Everything else on my TBR was going to be determined based around my reading of Infinite Jest. That's what I'm going to do next October, and maybe even November probably, depending on how I expect for House of Leaves to go. I'm sure I'll have discussions with Reen and Patrick and a few others about this, and some of the other friends who are going to be reading it this October. I'm going to read this next year. Not sure if there's going to be anybody left to do a read along with me for it like we did for Infinite Jest, but it's gonna be okay. I'm excited for it, but not this year, unfortunately. So that is the video. Some pretty simple, slow plans for this month, all things considered. Just finishing up some things that are currently already open on my plate. That is how it goes sometimes. I'm still not really in the mood to do any audiobook stuff. Not even doing immersive reading for Witchy Eye, even though I have the first few audiobooks for that series. Because I already started reading the books eyeball only when I tried to get into the audio for it. I was like, I can't do this. I need my head narration for this to work. No shade on the actual narrator of the book. It was just my brain wasn't having it, whether because of my having started the book already or because I just still can't make my brain want to do audio right now. I don't know, but that's how things are going there. Like I said, the only other manga on the list for the moment was going to be Goodnight Poon Poon. Definitely not in the mood for that right now, so we'll see whenever that swings around back onto my TBR, probably sometime next year. Maybe even shortly after I finish Monster. Not so sure. Either way, I'm keeping it pretty simple, finishing these other books, and I'll be able to talk more about that next month whenever that is finished. You know, normal monthly reading wrap up and TBR stuff. But thank you for watching this video. If you did, I really appreciate you sticking around, and I'll be back this Thursday for the second one of these Lord of Chaos reading diaries. Otherwise, this Sunday I'm going to be continuing finally on the train of finishing up my Cormac McCarthy book reviews with the Sunset Limited, so that's going to be coming on Sunday as a sort of like bonus episode for the book binge. These next couple months I'm going to be doing Sunday episodes in between Fortnights on the Isle, so that's something I'm excited about too. More on some of that in the State of Affairs, which comes tomorrow. But otherwise, thank you for watching one final time. I hope to see you guys in the next video.